Yeah, I said, is that a clap for me? No. I am following two of the most amazing women in the world, and it's a privilege. So thank you all for being here this evening. I am Rod Bigelow. I'm Executive Director of Crystal Bridges and the Momentary. And it is exciting to welcome you all to the Art and Wellness Weekend here at the Heartland Whole Health Institute. Are you excited? I love the enthusiasm. That's awesome. This is a weekend that celebrates the intersection of art, health, and well-being, and how creativity, science, and mindfulness come together to strengthen human connection. Yes, I love it. Let's do shout-outs all night. Across Crystal Bridges, the Heartland Whole Health Institute, and awesome, the Alice L. Walton School of Medicine, we're building a campus that not only studies well-being, but also helps people experience it. Through art, programs, and our architecture, we're creating space designated to supporting reflection, connection, and care. To begin, I want to take a moment to thank our Art and Wellness Festival sponsors, Procter, Gamble, and Mercy. Please join me in thanking them for making this happen. It is only through the support of folks like Procter & Gamble and Mercy that we're able to make these weekends possible, and their shared commitment to whole health and whole health being is apparent through and through. I'd also like to thank the Whole Health Institute team for their partnership in developing and presenting all the programming this weekend. You will notice, well, no, there's not a QR code. There was a QR code. Thank you for validating what it says. Thank you. So if you want to ask questions, there'll be a short time at the end of the conversation to be able to ask a couple questions, submit them through the QR code, and we'll have our team ask them at the end. So please do that. This evening's keynote is a special opportunity to hear from someone who has spent decades bringing joy and inspiration to millions and millions of people. On screen, yes? Both on screen and real life, and who has dedicated the past 20 years to advancing mindfulness and emotional health to children across the world. I don't need to tell you this, but we are honored to have Goldie Hawn. An Academy Award-winning actress, producer, director, and best-selling author, Goldie is also the founder of the Goldie Hawn Foundation, a public charity equipping children with the social and emotional skills needed to lead smarter, healthier, and happier lives. Through MindUP, she has brought evidence-based mindfulness practices to more than 6 million children. And those are kids across the globe. She's helping young people manage stress, build empathy, and develop lifelong resilience, something that's incredibly important today. The work is also making an impact on our region as well. Crystal Bridges is partnering with the Bentonville School District, MindUP, and the Heartland Whole Health Institute to integrate these evidence-based mindful practices into our local schools, fostering well-being and emotional growth across our community. We are so happy to have someone joining Goldie tonight in the conversation, Romy Drucker. Romy, yes, you can clap for her. That was her husband that started the clap. Romy leads efforts to ensure every child has access to opportunity and purpose at the Walton Family Foundation. Romy's been a leader in education for more than 15 years, from founding The 74, a nonprofit news organization focused on education, to her work in New York City Department of Education, improving outcomes for more than 1 million students. Please welcome Romy and Goldie to the stage.
Thank you. Hi. I'm so happy to see all of you. Yeah.
And we are so, so happy you are here. Thank you so much for joining us in Bentonville.
With pleasure.
So excited to have Goldie here to talk about work that we are so collectively passionate about, along with the Walton family. Thank you, Alice, for your decades of commitment to young children as well.
Yes.
I know we both believe deeply that our young people need us and our young people are in crisis, and that crisis has become exacerbated since COVID. Young people in this country are feeling lonely and disconnected and
sad, yeah.
in need of groundedness. And you have been a pioneer in this space before it was, part of the conversation on education. So I just want to start with hearing about the MindUP program. Tell us a little bit about the program in your own words, and share with us the journey that brought you to founding this.
Well, got an hour? Well, first of all, you started looking at your own life, right? So when I was in elementary school, I didn't learn to read. I came back and my mom said, "Why don't you have a book, Goldie?" And I was like in second grade. And I don't know, and then my boyfriend, who I actually interpreted for him because he had 2 sets of buck teeth and he wasn't able to speak very well. So he said, "David, why doesn't Goldie have a reading book?" And he said, "Because she's too dumb." And that, well, I didn't care. I mean, I was in the purple balls. And that was the most fabulous thing because nobody was in it but me. So my mother said, "What do you mean she doesn't know how to read?" So we went to school. She talked to Mrs. Povich, who I was madly in love with, and broke the news that the Purple Balls was actually the worst reading group. And so my mom taught me how to read. I didn't know it, but I had a little bit of dyslexia. And back in those days, they didn't diagnose that stuff. So I went through school struggling, never thinking I was that smart. And but I signed all my papers, "Love Goldie," even even when they weren't finished. Now, I have basically another experience. And when I was in 6th grade, I was asked to come down, like the whole school, and not the school, but the 6th grade, to see a video, like an audio, like a 16 millimeter. And we went down there, and I thought I was going to see something about corn and Iowa, or something else. And it came on the screen, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, and it went into. This is what will happen when there's an enemy attack. And I started to shake, and I could hardly speak. I went to the teacher and I said, "Mrs. Whatever her name was, I have to go home to lunch now." She said, well, Goldie, you never go home for lunch. We have hot lunch downstairs. She said, "I know, but my mom really want me to come back." And I ran home. I walked to school every day. I ran home. And then I got to my house and I called my mom at the store. And I said, "Mommy, we're all going to die. We're all going to die because the bomb is going to hit us." And she says, "What? Okay, I'm coming home." So she, came home in her pointy high-heeled shoes and her straight skirt and her purse. It's just a look I will never forget. But she said, "Now, what did she tell you?" I said, "Well, I saw this film and I explained it to her." She picks up the phone and she calls the Department of Education. She said, "What in the hell are you showing our kids? You think they're going to survive an atom bomb? I mean, what, duck and cover? Don't look at the flashing light?" I mean, it was really something. And she got on the phone, she gave him hell. And then she said to me, come over here, I'm going to show you something. The reason why Russia won't bomb us is because, first of all, nobody wants to die. And it is sort of helping us stay peaceful because we don't want to die. So I don't want you to feel like you have a problem. This is what people will think, but don't worry about it. Now, that was my amazing mother. However, I suffered that trauma for quite a while. And in order to comfort me at sleep time, I decided that I was going to read my Bible. And I got to the 23rd Psalm, and it said, yea, I go through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, because thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff will comfort me. And I read that every night, because it gave me hope. It gave me something to believe in, and it gave me peace. So moving through all of these things, I think I was probably meant to do what I'm doing. Because being a very empathetic person, understanding and going through life in a way that I thought I was stupid and I realized I wasn't. And also understanding how wonderful it is to be a little bit dyslexic. But on the other hand, I became anxious when I became successful. Suddenly I was pulled out of the chorus line. I was a ballerina all my life. I was happy. And then I got very anxious because I didn't want to leave my dance world. I wanted to be a dancer. I was already a professional dancer. And I danced till I was 3 years old. So with that, I then became anxious and panic attacks. This is not me. This wasn't Goldie. This wasn't the person I knew at all. And I was so frightened, and I was doing this TV show because they wrote in a show for me. This is my first thing called Good Morning World. And I had to go lie down in between shots because I was so afraid I was going to have another panic attack. So looking through what I had during a time when I thought I was perfectly normal and realized I wasn't, I realized I was fragile. That I then went to a doctor right away, and I stayed with that doctor for 8 years. I was 21 years old when I had this. And he helped me learn who I was, and he helped me understand the working of the mind, the understanding of emotions, and how to basically look at things with not so much transference, really clean. And I went to the University of myself. University of Goldie. How I opened doors and windows because of this experience. How I learned to understand and have tolerance. And I went in there and I had the mantra and I had the thing and there was this window was open, whatever. Guys, I cannot even explain what happened to me on the first time I ever meditated. And I can't describe the joy. It's as if my heart lit up. It's as if I could finally feel my heart beat, that I was focusing in on my breath and my mantra and the wind coming through this window and the incense that was going. I will never forget the peace that I felt inside. It was the first time through all that I was going through in my 8 years of working through my own issues, which weren't many. It was just realizing who I was. That took me to another place, which is what is going on in the brain? Why is it when we feel this way? What does it tickle inside of you? What is meditation? It wasn't mindfulness then. It was called meditation. Mindfulness is a big word. I love it. But sometimes it means a lot of things, not just one thing. But now what we have is very simple. What does it feel like to meditate? Well, first of all, you've got to tackle your brain because it thinks all the time, which is what we tell the children. But you have to come back to your breath, so we're creating a muscle strength. But more importantly, joy. Connecting to that place inside of you that actually speaks to you, that you actually, through your mind and your thought and your consciousness, have an ability to activate that just by thinking about it. So these are the things that I was really thinking and concerned about during that time. During all the 80s, all my producing, all the years of things wanting to make movies about something that I thought were important, 9/11 came along, right when I was doing In Search of Joy Around the World. That was a documentary I wanted to do, and I was preparing it with HBO. First of all, they asked me what happiness was. That's when I knew we were in trouble as a country. But on the other hand, I took everything. This is not a time to talk about joy. It's a time to start healing. So I took everything I learned about the brain, everything I learned about thinking, everything I learned about state of mind. The brain is the thing. And I started to think, well, wait a minute. We have all this research. It's in petri dishes in universities. And no one is realizing that the people that need to know about how their brain works are our children, because they have to use it every day, and they're expected to understand it. That's their tool. And it was like this whole epiphany for me, because I tried to figure out where happiness came from, where happiness lives in our body when I was doing the documentary. Where does it live? It lives here. That our brain is so powerful, and it's so important that we learn to know it, and also how to manage it, and how to feed it, and how to talk to it, because that brain talks to every piece of our body. They're such pals. And I wish that our children from a very early age could learn about their brain with very simple ways of knowing what the amygdala is, the prefrontal cortex, and the hippocampus. This is their emotional brain. To know that when they come in and they're dysregulated, they don't know how to bring themselves back. Teachers are losing their mind. I don't blame them. But if you don't have tools, you don't have information, and you don't have the understanding of how to actually go around getting better results, then you have to call and raise your hand and say, I need help. And that's where MindUP comes in, because I started MindUP then, 9/11. Why? Because children were being traumatized by this. They were seeing these big buildings going down over and over every day, all the time. They don't know the difference if they were not being hit now or hit every day. In the meantime, moms, dads, myself, I knit the American flag. I ran upstairs. I didn't know what to do. I was so devastated because my world, our world had changed forever, and I knew it. I knew at that time when those buildings went down, things were never going to be the same again. So I went upstairs, I found some threads, and I knit the American flag, which is the only thing that got me through this. And it still sits there, right in my kitchen. Because we in America are a great group of people. And a lot of us really have to learn how to get together. There's all kinds of ways of thinking, and all kinds of ways that the brain actually pulls apart how they believe, and other people how they believe. That's okay. If we don't let people believe what they believe in, as long as it's not damaging us, or we're, I'm being critical thinking, how are we ever going to get along? And Kurt and I don't agree on stuff. Am I going to throw babies out with bathwater because he doesn't agree with me? Am I going to not see my best friend because she might think differently than I do? We're human. We have blood the same color. We have a brain the same color. We have the brain the same size. What and why do we feel so different from each other? Because what we think, That's okay. There would be so much less arguing and polarization. What's happening now is our children now are showing signs of loneliness. Now, that may not be because they think differently and so forth. We're adults. But the other part of it is now we've got our children to look at, to let them know that everybody has a right to think what they think, that what you think is fine. So when we do our MindUP program, I put everything I learned about happiness, because I wanted our children to feel happier, because a happy brain can learn, and give them more optimism in the classroom. Why does it have to be constant? These children can't focus very long. Are we getting them up and moving them around in mindful movement for a while? Aren't we learning to laugh in the classroom a little bit? So these are the areas that I look at that time. Was I naive? Yeah. I wasn't an educator. I had dyslexia. Heaven knows. No, I just had an idea that if every child learned how their brain works in the classroom, from kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade, that's where we go, because that's the developing brain, these kids are going to take it for the rest of their life. So what we did was we started with brain science. The MindUP started with brain science. And all your little characters, your amygdala, your prefrontal cortex, and your hippocampus, they're brain buddies. And the children now learn what each one does. And that's the emotional brain. And they learn what happens when they come in and they're scared, they're uncertain, they're angry, they're fidgety, they're whatever. Is a brain break is in order. This is not meditation. But every brain needs a break, and the children know it because we talk about it in the classroom. Every brain needs a break. So we do 3 brain breaks a day in the classroom. But they learn now what's happening inside their own brain. So they are able to actually put it together. So they know that the amygdala is overactive, and their hippocampus and their, not the hippocampus, their prefrontal cortex can't think. So that's what we are looking at. How do we describe why you can calm down, how you make yourself feel better, how can you self-regulate those emotions? And that's what we are teaching our children through our educators. And then with that, we have the next section of that, which is do gratitude journals. Why? Because everything has to do with the brain. Gratitude changes the brain in such a positive way. And we want those little neurons to be connecting all the time in a positive fashion because it creates bundles. And those bundles, we want to stay there. And then there are other aspects that we do, other things like giving and understand brain science and understand mirror neurons and how wonderful it is to have a brain that you could feed. This is what we do, and we've researched it. Obviously, I was not going to go out unless it was researched, and the research is stellar. And when we talk about what it's important and what we've learned today, but I learned this today about art. When you go into a gallery or you are staring and looking at an art, a drawing, a sculpture, you are in this environment, just like cortisol levels were able to be managed and went down with our children, because we managed the cortisol levels in our research. The same research was done to lower cortisol in art. Art has the same effect on our body and our mind. And isn't it interesting that the body and the mind are so connected? One of the things that the brain is most connected is to the heart. That relationship of brain to heart is huge. I'm anxious, heart beats faster. Everything's all of one piece. My blood pressure's up because I'm worried about whatever. Calm down. Slow everything down. Take a brain break. So these are things we're learning now about how these kind of things are being put in the classroom, but also art and the meaning of art, the value of understanding that when we look at something beautiful or stimulating, that we're having a somatic experience. That means in the body. That means when kids are doing a brain break, and they start feeling calm, and it tells you that it makes them feel calm, that's in the body. Heart rate goes down, and you're ready to learn. And I was just talking today about being a ballerina. And I think one of your questions, have I taken all your job away?
This is wonderful. I think the audience is thrilled with this.
Okay, keep me online.
You're good.
Uh,
In a minute, I'm going to ask you a question. So.
Okay. But the one thing that I kind of realized, last few years, because people ask about, which you were going to ask me about mindfulness, or how did I get into it, or whatever. But what I realized was that I started ballet dancing when I was 3 years old. And to be a ballerina, you have to be completely aware of every place your body is. You have to be focusing on how your foot looks while you're lifting it up to here. You have to realize how you're balancing, to know what's balancing in your body. That was the beginning of mindfulness. So I was meditating and focusing on things before I even know what it was. So that's why when I started meditating, it came so fast to me. Even though the thoughts come and go, and you just sort of let them go and come back to your breath or to your mantra. But still, I sunk right into it. And that was one of the reasons. But the analogy, and then I'm going to get to this, is that you can't jump on straight legs. You have to bend. So when you're dancing, you have to bend first. And then you lift. And once you do that, that's what Brain Break is all about.
Can we please give this beautiful woman a round of applause? You're incredible. Thank you for sharing that deep personal reflection. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, this was a calling for you. Like, this, you didn't choose this chose you. And that's that passion that you bring to this. I mean, it is just incredible to be surrounded by. But not only that you have grounded this in evidence. And as I said earlier, the Walton Family Foundation supports schools and children across the country. We've done some recent polling in partnership with Gallup, and what we know is that this generation is deeply struggling with their emotional well-being and their mental health. The most recent data that I've seen says that only 20% of this generation, Gen Z, says they have excellent mental health. And so this is about how we feel. It's also about feeling supported in a way that allows you to succeed personally, allows you to succeed academically. And this program that you've set up is just creating a context in classrooms across the country and around the globe to do that. Are there any teachers in the room? Raise your hand. Can we get a round of applause for our educators? You all are amazing. And I want to ask you a question about the role of teachers and parents in all of this, because you're describing these habits and these skill sets and these mindsets that students are developing in school. What is the role of the adult? What is the role of the teacher or the parent in supporting young children in kind of finding themselves, being in their own university, to borrow your term?
We model, and the whole idea is modeling. When you have a MindUP classroom, there are things that you model, that you go by. And but more importantly, that's why New York City Union called us in to talk about it for teachers. They, of course, they care about their students, but they really wanted their educators to be educated in MindUP because it reduces their stress, gives them an ability to actually control their classroom. Because we do this 3 times a day, that means that eventually they get used to it. Okay, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's for teachers and educators. The idea is that you have so much also to be concerned about every day. Every day. You have students that are untenable. You've got issues that you're dealing with and have to do with grading papers and on and on. Is it just another thing to do? And that's what a lot of these programs are. A lot of the programs coming up that we do is just one more thing to do. And so that's where it comes in. The overwhelm is just too much. But when you have things that you need to do, you will start feeling better yourself. Because if you create an optimistic classroom, and even though you don't feel like it, an interesting thing about the brain, even when you're feeling low, sad, or just ho-hum, smile. Because when you smile, it's a signal to your brain. And it's very interesting. So you have to understand that you have complete control over a lot of things that are going on. But if we're going to do gratitude, you're doing it with them. You do gratitude. You tell the kids what you're grateful for, and you stay that way. And then when you do gratitude, and you do it maybe 3 times a week, and you say, go home and come back and say what you're grateful for, or raise your hand, guys, what are you grateful for today? Or let's do a circle when you're little and pass the gratitude stone. Or let's do some posters around gratitude and what you're grateful for. Who are you grateful for? Is there anybody that you're grateful for? For children. But you as educators will actually absorb all of that because that's going to be part of your day. So it makes a big difference on how you're going to be able to manage the classroom, especially when you do brain breaks. Because the brain breaks, they'll be fidgety, they'll do it. Give it a couple of months. But don't back down. It's the 3 times a day that it's the absolute secret sauce. So I think that's what you have to understand. You have the opportunity to take a brain break from your life too, because you have one, as you know, and sometimes they're not easy. So that's one way to do it. And the other thing we didn't talk about is breath. Breath sounds like, oh, we're breathing and we're doing our breath stuff. This is very powerful. Breath work is very powerful. Because there's the breathing where you breathe, 4 counts up, hold 4 counts, 4 counts down, hold. This changes the brain. This is not about, oh, I'm opening up my lungs and I'm doing things. No, it's neurologically correlate. That relaxes you down. I'm going to tell you a little story. I was down next to the treadmill with a guy the other day, and we were, running together. I was walking, he was running. And, yeah.
You were doing great.
Anyway, so we started talking. Well, he's an ex-special ops guy, Green Beret. And we started talking about breath. And he said, it's really funny. He said, because I said, well, the Marines actually, I think we're doing breathing exercises for them to actually calm down. And giving them what they call box breathing. And then he made a joke. He said, well, I'm Green Beret, and actually we did it, not more than the Marines did it. But in his training of special operations, which is huge, special forces, he was put into a box. And it was a box, very small, he's a big guy. And he got in that box, and they closed the box up. This is part of their training, and then water started coming into the box. He said, I was literally like freaking out. He'd stay in there, you got to do it, you got to keep it going, you got to do it. And he said, I finally did my breathing. I did this box breathing. And he said, Goldie, it changed everything. I was able to get through this through breath. So when we talk about breathing in the classroom, it's the same with the children. It's the same with our adults. We breathe, hold, and we let go. And we do that 3 times before we even hit the chime. And the reason the chime is there is so the brain can actually adhere to a sound. And once you can't hear the sound, we catch them that way. Just try to listen to that sound. Keep attention. Longer they do it, the longer they hear it. Very interesting. And then after they turn their hands over, and all we do is follow our breath. Now, your brain's going to think, because that's what brains do. And your brain will think too, but just let that thought go and come back to your breath. That's building a muscle, guys. That's the way we approach it. And I think that for teachers, it's important. We are working with parents now, giving them some hope, some tools. So we are working with that as well. But you've got to surround the child with this kind of support. It's incredibly important.
Thanks to the Crystal Bridges Middle School partnership, students across Arkansas are going to have access to this program. It will be in classrooms across the state, which is truly amazing. Is there a story of a student, as we think about all of the students in Arkansas who will benefit from the program, that we can kind of hold in our hearts, that you can share with us, that really transformed because of this? I'm sure.
Well, I'll tell you one that just happened. It was in New York City schools. It was at District 26. And I decided MindUP was 17 lessons. I'm thinking, this is too many lessons. So I want to do MindUP Light. Learn about your brain, get that brain break going, and one pro-social behavior. We don't have to get into social-emotional learning right now. Let's just get into the activity of how you can calm your children down. So they piloted it, this school, and they loved it. Then they wanted more, and they wanted more. But once they got everything down in the beginning, it was fantastic. One little boy was there who was autistic. He came into the school, this was 3rd grade, he came into the school nonverbal. He was doing MindUP with everybody else. The principal asked if he would like to come up to the principal's office to ring the chime. And he said yes. So he went up there, he rang the chime. But he recited the entire brain break. But sit quietly. He memorized all of it. And the teacher was like moved to tears. She said, I had no idea that he knew that. So this was a call that we got back from our office at the UFT. They said, I can't even tell you what that meant to us. Another story is there's a little boy who had autism. He was in obviously mixed school. This was in New Jersey, and he was really worried about taking a test, and he was having a real moment. He was shaking his hands. He couldn't get it together. So one of the children said, could we do our brain break circle? That might calm him down. And she said, of course. They all sat in a circle. They did their breathing and their MindUP, and he calmed down and he could take his test. And my third story, which is up in Albany, New York, the teacher came in and she found them sitting in a circle doing brain breaks as children. She said, what's going on? But one of the little boys was crying. And they said, well, my father, he said, is going away to Iraq, and I won't see him. And another little boy said, well, my dad had brain cancer, and we couldn't see him either for a while. And then another one said, I know how that feels because my dad went to jail for a while, and I couldn't see him. And then when my mom and dad broke up, he said, I just want to say that, it was okay, that I still see my dad. Now, these are boys, and it was a mixed, boys and girls. These are boys who had enough empathy to care for each other. And that, to me, is all I wanted to build, aside from optimistic thinking and connectivity, was a dependency on each other in the classroom. And that, I think, was an amazing experience.
Thank you so much for sharing those stories, and I'm very excited about all the stories that we'll have from right here in our own backyard. We are going to take some questions from the audience. Hopefully you've submitted some through the QR code, and then I will wrap us up with one final question.
Great. The first question we have is from Tanya. I've resonated with everything you've shared this evening. I work with high school and college students to help them see learning as more than grades or performance, to connect curiosity, mindset, and effort with genuine understanding and a sense of purpose. My hope is that they find joy in learning and feel empowered to discover and fulfill their purpose. How do you think we can begin to shift school culture to support that kind of inner development and fulfillment rather than focusing solely on academic achievement?
School culture is very tough. And that's something that's a problem unto itself. So in order to fix a school culture, you have to fix the mindset and fix people who actually are stuck in a rut. You have to break out of some of these molds that they have now in education. And some are doing it. So it's changing pretty rapidly right now. But boy, some people just don't want to get rid of the old stuff that's just not working. And it's very, very hard. But you never stop. If you can create a cadre of schools that align themselves with a new culture and a new idea, a new way of doing things, that's a movement. But I can tell you, starting from top down right now, it's very, very difficult. Also, the transients of different educators. Principals leave, school superintendents go every couple of years. Who's holding it all together? And that's one of the bigger issues, is what do we believe in? And there are some people that are very, very have ownership over their child, and they don't want you doing anything with them that's going to hurt them. And there are other people who are much more liberal-minded, or I would say, I wouldn't even call it liberal, just sort of more experimental, to know that there are other ways that you can teach your child. It's really hard. I hear you, and I express my own frustration.
Thank you for that question. And thank you for the optimism you shared in your answer, too, that things are changing right now, and educators are thinking about the whole child. We have some different systems of thinking about student success that are more holistic, but I am with you that more work needs to be done. Let's take another question from the audience.
This is from Kaylee. Personally, as a trauma-informed specialist for a behavioral health and mental health facility, I have the opportunity and privilege to train and educate teachers and staff how to be trauma-informed when working with students. Does MindUP also teach educators how to be trauma-informed?
Yes, there is a trauma-informed program that we have with that, and our trainers do understand that, and what the differences are. And it was interesting because, you know, after the fire in Pacific Palisades where we live, it was extremely traumatizing. And I remember doing a Zoom with, I forgot his name, but he's, you know, an expert in trauma, and goes out to, you know, a lot of these places where children are just freaked out, and so are parents, you know. And try to work with them as well in order to, you know, reimagine. It's very hard. I mean, I don't know, how is your experience working with trauma?
Maybe we can bring some of the educators up to the stage at the end of the talk. And thank you to our teachers for submitting questions. Whoever submitted that was a question, yes. Okay. But we'll create space after for some dialogue with educators. We would love to do that. Let's take another question from the audience, and we'll come back to that.
This is from Cassie. It's impressive. Your foundation has been at this for over 20 years, giving you access to long-term impacts. What does your data indicate about the impact of mindfulness education on long-term outcomes related to risk for mental health disorders in adulthood?
That's a lot of reverberation. Could you say that again and make this not so close?
What does your data indicate about the impact of mindfulness education on long-term outcomes related to risk for mental health disorders in adulthood?
Well, unfortunately, we haven't done a lot of longitudinal studies. We did do one, and they're very hard to do because they move out. I mean, that's the whole aspect with the program. But what I'm learning mostly is that what they don't forget is the brain break. That seems to be the one that sticks with them. And I remember some kids coming back from college in Vancouver and saying, I don't think we could have gone through college if we didn't have MindUP in the 5th grade, by the way. So it sticks a lot with them, so they understand what's going on, and that they don't forget. And if that's the one thing they take with them, because, you know, the other things, we don't have to, basically, we learn what acts of kindness. We all know what acts of kindness is. The idea of creating an optimistic experience in the classroom, which is really good for your brain, is to understand what's going on when you give somebody a gift, because you get the same hit of dopamine. But more importantly, it's a somatic experience, and they take it with them pretty much for the rest of their life. And then they teach their own children. And that's the way it goes. Even the kids come home and they teach their own siblings. So I think it's a much needed aspect of the preparation, if nothing else, to learn.
We have just a few minutes left, Goldie, and I want to ask you one kind of final question to wrap up, and then I hope you'll lead us.
I know, what was my favorite movie?
Well, we wouldn't be so sad if you answered that one. But I was going to ask something more on topic. You know, one of the things that has come through in this conversation is how essential joy and gratitude are. So I'd like to ask you, kind of in wrapping up here, what is one thing you feel joyful about right now, and what is one thing you feel grateful about right now?
You know, there isn't one thing. I honest to God, I think that's true. Every day, I was grateful when I drove in here today, because I got to look at those trees. I mean, really, it lifted me up. Joy, I believe, if we nurture that experience, that it lives inside of you. I believe, this may not be true, but I believe that we're born with a seed of joy. We just don't activate it enough. Because if you watch a baby, they smile, 80 times a day and laugh. And I want people to understand, like me, that's you. That was you. And I've actually said to some people, why don't you get a baby picture of yourself and put it right next to you, right where you work, right at your desk. You can always remind yourself that that's who you are, and that smile and that giggle and that laugh is inside of you. But all you have to do is let it out. And I think that's the one area. So joy for me, oh, sweetheart, watching my children run down the street for trick or treat, looking at my babies playing hockey at age 4 years old, looking at my daughter, who's an extraordinary human and unbelievably talented, and she will win the Academy Award. So this is, and joy is just looking at that leaf and really looking at it. If you ever took time to just look at that leaf, it's like, look at all the veins in it. Look at all those things. Look at all of it. And, you know, a leaf is only a few things that we're not made of. What we made in the leaf are like that. So gratitude and those feelings of gratitude are amazing. But you see, that also brings up joy. They're really connected. And then I'll tell you one other thing, and then we'll close with that, but we talked about that today. I keep pointing to this. But this is where we cry from, and this is where we laugh from here. And I believe that if you think about what's in there, and you tickle it a little bit, you can make yourself laugh because it's there. Joy is in there. Just reach down there and get it. Because there's no reason. It's not happiness. Happiness is something different. It's circumstantial. But when you want to feel joy, just start looking at things differently and feel that in there. It'll obey you, I promise.
Ladies and gentlemen, Goldie Hawn. We are so grateful for you, and we are so joyful that you are here.
my daddy here because he was born in Little Rock. And I came to Little Rock a lot, so I feel a little bit part of all of you. So, thanks.
Mi táctica de disfrutar de tu